Hi, welcome to tonight's live chapter reading of The Dream Catchers, Prehistoria Series Book 1 by J.U. Menon. Chapter 1, The Birthday Debacle. Radhika blinked as a streak of sunlight fell against the open book on her lap. Sitting cross-legged amid the books and papers strewn across her bedroom floor, she glanced up at the skylight, framing the bright orange and scarlet hues of the evening sky. She turned her attention back to the book, her weary eyes tracing the words now framed by the thin sliver of light. "Your dreams only show you faces you have seen before," the book declared. "The human brain is incapable of inventing new faces." But an unfamiliar face had appeared in her dreams. Images of a rusty brown top hat and tailcoat flashed through her mind. Radhika let out an exasperated sigh. Over the past week, she must have pored through at least 100 books in the public library, hoping to find an explanation for the strange goings-on in her recent dreams. But as the pillar of books beside her had grown, her face had grown correspondingly longer. She yawned and flipped through the pages. It was then that her eyes fell on a single word scribbled against the margin. PRESTORIA. "Radhika!" her aunt called from downstairs. Coming!" Radhika scrambled up, intending to add the book to the pile beside her, and then hesitated. Opening it once more, she ruffled through the pages, but there were no further scribblings in there, not even an underline. PRESTORIA. The word seemed intensely familiar, as though it was something she had read about a long time ago and since forgotten. "Radhika, we're getting late!" "Coming, Mousie!" She slammed the book shut and dropped it on her bed. As she bounded down the stairs, Radhika's thoughts turned, as they so often did these days, to her recent dreams. It had all started a month ago, when the funny old man had appeared in her dreams for the very first time. She remembered it quite vividly, because she had dreamt of her father yet again. In the dream, she was in the living room of her old home, playing a game of chess with her father, when she noticed a movement by the glass sliding doors to the balcony. The man stood leaning against the doorway, scribbling furiously into a notebook. She jumped up in shock, and the dream dissolved, taking the old man and her father with it. 2 days of dreamless sleep later, he put in an appearance in her dreams yet again. This time, she dreamt that she had forgotten her math homework at home. She walked to the classroom nervously and made a beeline for the teacher's desk. Only, the person behind the desk was not her math teacher. The funny old man glanced up and smiled as she approached him. "Mr. Winters!" Radhika gasped. He had never mentioned his name, and yet, instinctively, she knew who he was. He gave her a toothy grin, and she woke up, staring around wildly and covered in sweat. Mr. Winters proceeded to appear in her dreams sporadically for the next month. Radhika dreamt of her parents often, having lost them just a year ago, and he seemed to appear in every single one of those dreams. In some, he would be scribbling furiously into his notebook, while in others he would simply watch from a corner. Whenever she tried to approach him, she would wake up abruptly. Radhika had lost count of the number of nights she had lain awake in bed, too scared to fall asleep, in case he appeared in her dreams again. This was why she had begun to seek refuge in the library after school, hoping that, hidden among its many rows of books, might be the answer to why he kept appearing in her dreams. But the library had not lived up to her expectations this time. She walked into the kitchen where her Aunt Shruti was bustling about, talking on the phone. On the counter were a birthday card and a box containing cake. Radhika had almost forgotten it was her grandmother's birthday. Shruti waved and cupped the speaker of the phone to mouth. "Where were you?" "Reading, sorry." "Hi, Maria. Yes, I'm here," Shruti said to the phone as she gestured frantically toward the card and turned away. The face of the card had a picture of a beagle, similar to the one her grandmother, whom she called Nani, used to own several years ago. A thought bubble by its head declared, "Wolfie birthday." Radhika chuckled as she opened the card. This was just the kind of silly greeting Nani would like. Beneath Shruti's birthday message in neat cursive handwriting was a messy scrawl with what looked like a chocolatey thumbprint that someone had tried to wipe off hastily. Radhika added her own birthday wishes and stuffed the card into the envelope. She then proceeded upstairs to quickly freshen up and comb her hair before her aunt got done with the call. "We'll be there in half an hour," Radhika heard her aunt say from the kitchen as she bounded down the stairs. "Is that okay?" "Yes, we'll be quick. Thanks, Maria." Shruti placed the phone down and picked up the cake and the card. "Okay, we'll have to leave right away. Where's Arav?" "Arav!" she yelled up the stairs. Coming, jeez. Radhika's little brother dragged himself down the stairs, his hair unkempt. How was school today, you guys? Shruti asked as she smoothed his hair down, and the three of them filed out the door. Arav ruffled it again while Shruti fumbled around her handbag for her keys. Fine, he answered. It was okay. I have a biology test the day after tomorrow, Radhika replied. Arav made faces as he imitated her soundlessly. That's great, Shruti replied, preoccupied. The three bundled into Shruti's red sedan and headed off towards the nursing home. The rush hour traffic meant that it took 30 minutes longer than usual to get there, and Radhika watched her aunt tapping the steering wheel nervously every time they stopped. Eventually, they arrived at the nursing home, parking haphazardly in one of the visitors' parking spots. The three hurried out of the car and into the building. Sorry we're late. Ma's not asleep, is she? Shruti asked breathlessly as they approached the familiar receptionist. No, Marie's been keeping her occupied. Miss Menon has been in a great mood all day. We've told her you're coming. This way, said the receptionist, as she led them past reception and down a corridor. She stopped in front of a door at the end of a corridor and knocked once before opening it. Shruti and the two children walked in cautiously. The room looked very much like it had when Radhika had visited Nani last month. A twin bed and an armchair were pushed up against the wall to their left. On this wall were framed photographs of Radhika, Arav, Nana, who had passed away 10 years ago, Shruti with Radhika's mother, and the children's parent at their wedding. A small television sat blaring atop the chest of drawers to their right. A vase with a couple fresh flowers stood by the television next to a couple birthday cards, which Radhika guessed were from people at the nursing home. Nani herself sat in a rocking chair by the foot of her bed, fumbling with her prayer beads. Maria, Nani's caregiver, sat on the edge of the bed, patting her arm and talking to her soothingly. Look who's here to see you, Miss Anand, said Maria, smiling, as she caught sight of Nani's visitors. Nani did not take her eyes off her prayer beads and muttered something to herself. It was difficult for Radhika to see Nani like this. She had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's a year ago and had to be moved to a nursing home after she had walked out of the house while Shruti was at work and couldn't remember her way back. Thankfully, a neighbor who had recognized her brought her back home safely. Radhika now caught random words, blunder and fire and years, from Nani's mumblings. Someone brought in a little side table and set it down in front of Nani while Shruti took the fruit cake out of the box and placed it on the table. Happy birthday, Ma. Shruti kissed her cheek, but Nani did not pay her any attention and continued to mutter to herself. Maria struck a match and lit the candle atop the cake. A sudden change occurred in Nani. One moment she was mumbling to herself, and the next she was ogling the cake in fear. No, she whispered as she struggled to push her chair backwards. Her prayer beads fell to the floor. No! She looked up and her eyes fell on Radhika. She breathed in sharply. A frail arm reached out and grabbed Radhika's wrist with unnatural strength, nearly upsetting the cake in the process. Don't worry, Aditi. Keep close. I'll get you out safely. Radhika turned towards her aunt in confusion. Aditi was Radhika's mother's name. Maria was quick to act. She doused the candle and moved the cake away. Ma, are you okay? Shruti asked, kneeling down beside her. Nani was breathing heavily as her eyes darted around the room. What's going on? Shruti asked, turning towards Maria. I don't know. She's never been like this before. Nani motioned with her finger for Radhika to come closer. She bent forward. Don't worry, Nani whispered in her ear. I know the way out of Prestoria. Radhika gasped. What's Prestoria? She asked, her voice shaking. But Nani did not seem to have heard her. I know the way, Nani repeated. The door is close by. I can sense it. Maria and Shruti exchanged confused glances. You're out now, Miss Anand, Maria said as she too kneeled down beside Nani. She stroked Nani's arm gently. Look, you're back in your room. I am? Nani's bewildered eyes found Maria, who nodded. Nani looked around, registering the room for the first time. She placed a hand on her chest and smiled. See, I told you the door is close by. Yes, you are safe. You should rest now, sweetie. Nani nodded like a child and leaned back in her chair, eyelids drooped. Yes, I feel tired. You should probably leave, Maria whispered to Shruti. I'll call you in an hour with an update. She gently pried Nani's fingers off Radhika's wrist, and Shruti led the children towards the door. Nani, her silver hair coming off her neat little bun and her red checkered shawl falling off her shoulders, was rocking lightly in the chair. "Happy birthday, Nani," Radhika muttered awkwardly as she turned to leave. "Yeah, happy birthday," Arav muttered too as they closed the door. The drive back home was silent. Shruti's knuckles were pale against the steering wheel, and her discreet attempts to wipe the tears flowing down her cheeks were not lost on Radhika. Nani had barely recognized Shruti today. That was a first. Nani always recognized her. And why had Nani mistaken her, Radhika, for her mother? They looked nothing alike. Radhika had not inherited Ma's sleek straight hair or her button nose. Those features had gone to Arav. Radhika had her papa's thick wavy hair and aquiline nose, although she did get her gray eyes from Ma, who had inherited them from Nani. The three had a quick dinner at a local eatery. All of them had a lot on their minds, but precious little to talk about. It was just as the car rolled into the street that Radhika glanced out the window. She froze. Mr. Winters was strolling nonchalantly down the street, hands behind his back as he surveyed the houses on either side. He was wearing the very same tailcoat and top hat that she had seen him in all her dreams. Radhika twisted around in her seat to watch him walk away. Her neighbor, Miss Vanderlee, marched past him just then, holding her cat, but neither spared so much as a glance to the strange man in a strange attire. Could they not see him? Cats were supposed to sense things out of the ordinary, weren't they? But then again, Radhika had her reservations about Bubbles. The cat always looked lost and confused. She turned and slumped into her seat as the car turned into their driveway. As soon as Shruti parked the car, Arav jumped out, opened the front door, and headed to the living room. "Arav, please come back, take off your shoes," Shruti called after him. "Don't you have homework to do?" "Yeah, but can I watch television just for half an hour? Please, please, please." Radhika ambled up the stairs leading to her bedroom and heard her aunt sigh. She must have nodded, for Arav shouted, "Thank you," seconds later. "Radhika, are you okay?" Shruti appeared at the foot of the stairs. Radhika turned and shrugged. "Yeah, I'm gonna start on my homework." "Are you all right, Mousie?" Shruti pressed her lips together and nodded. Yeah, I think so. I'll go lie down for a bit. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" Radhika nodded once and continued upstairs. It had been a long day, and she felt glad to be back in the safety of her room. Ignoring the books on her floor, she sat down at her table and sifted through her backpack. 1,000 hitherto suppressed thoughts exploded in her head. What were the chances that she would come across that strange word in a book, and then Nani would mention it that very same evening? That was so bizarre. And she had seen Mr. Winters outside in the streets that day. Why? And most importantly, how? How was it that she can see him while she was awake? Wasn't he a figment of her imagination? Or, she gulped, was he? She shuddered as she opened her biology notes and ruffled through the pages. In mitosis, the parent cell divides into 2 daughter cells, each containing the same number of chromosomes as the parent nucleus. In mitosis, parent. Why did Nani get so worked up? What was PRESTORIA? And where were Mr. Winters and PRESTORIA related somehow? Radhika rubbed her temples. The muffled noises from the television made it difficult to focus. She tried to read her notes one more, but after 20 minutes she had made little progress. "Arav, that's enough! Homework time!" Shruti called from the landing. "Please, Mousie, 5 more minutes." "No, not another minute. You have an hour to finish homework and get into bed." The television turned off, and Radhika heard angry thuds as Arav stomped up the stairs and into his room. Radhika turned her weary eyes back to her notes. In mitosis, the parent cell divides into 2 daughter cells, the narrator declared. On the television screen, a large lavender-colored blob appeared with little squiggly structures in it. The squiggly shapes now arranged themselves in a straight line in the center of the blob. She was so glad Papa had gotten her this documentary. She had not understood mitosis when it was taught in class. She turned around to thank her father, who was sitting beside her on the couch, only it was not her father. "Mr. Winters!" she cried as she jumped up in horror and moved away. For the wizened man had been sitting next to her, legs crossed and shaking his foot as he watched television and scribbled in his notebook. He glanced at her, smiled, and stood up. The living room dissolved before her eyes and was replaced with darkness. "Hello?" Radhika called out. Was he there? She spun around as she heard footsteps close to her and eyes flew open. Radhika stood up so quickly she nearly upset her chair. She scanned the room in panic. Everything was still. She walked towards her bed and plonked down, covering her face. Her heart thudded in her ears. "This has got to stop," she muttered into her palm with shaking hands. She poured out a glass of water and guzzled it down. The cuckoo clock told her it was 9 at night. The house was silent now. Radhika lay down on her bed. As her breathing began to stabilize, she reached for the bedside lamp and turned the light off. Moonlight flooded into the room, coating everything in a thin layer of silver. Everything except Radhika gulped, in the far corner of the room next to her bookshelf. The shadows in the corner began to swing back and forth. They started to get bigger, swallowing the bookshelf and the books on the floor as they crept slowly towards her. The shadows began to take shape, and Radhika let out a stifled shriek and turned on the lamp. She looked back at the now vacant corner. Her imagination really was starting to get the better of her. Deciding to leave the light on, she turned on its side, her heightened senses watching for any movement, any sound that seemed out of the ordinary. After several minutes, she relaxed, and before she knew it, drifted off into a dreamless sleep, free of bodiless footsteps and funny old men. Hope you enjoyed the reading.